Hi everyone. So today I'm doing my presentation on hazardous waste spills and the impact on subsistence economy in rural Alaska. This is a presentation for ECON 111, the economy of rural Alaska. So today's topics is first about the importance of subsistence activities in rural Alaska. We're going to discuss how subsistence activities establish food security and why is it so important to rural Alaskan communities. We're then going to talk about some of the consequences of hazardous waste spills, the impact of the spills on wildlife and the environment, and the lasting effects. Then we're going to talk about some possible safeguards for spills, some issues that prevent these safeguards, and how we can prevent it in the future. So first, why is subsistence so important? So first, it establishes food security. Many rural communities in Alaska rely heavily on subsistence activities as a primary source of food. With limited access to grocery stores and high food prices due to the remote location, subsistence provides a reliable and affordable source of nutritious food. It ensures food security for residents, especially during the harsh winters when transportation of goods may be difficult to obtain. Also, it has a high cultural traditional impact. Subsistence activities include hunting, fishing, and gathering. Each are deeply rooted in the cultural heritage of Alaska Native communities. These traditions have been passed down through generations and are integral to maintaining cultural identity and heritage. Subsistence activities contribute significantly to the local economy in rural Alaska. They provide employment opportunities, particularly for indigenous populations, through guiding services, equipment sales, and other related industries. Additionally, subsistence harvests often supplement household incomes, reducing reliance on cash-based economies and government assistance programs. So, first, rural Alaskans harvest on average between 275 and 360 pounds of wild fish, wildlife, plants, and birds each year. And there's three main reasons to this. First is accessibility, second is reliability, and the third is the nutritional value. So, in many rural areas and remote part areas of Alaska, access to traditional grocery stores or markets are limited or non-existent. Subsistence activities such as hunting, fishing, and gathering provide a direct and accessible source of nutritious food for communities where store-bought options are just not available or are expensive. Also, it's unreliable to purchase goods. Subsistence activities can provide a consistent and reliable source of food to members of rural Alaska, especially during times when external food supplies may be disrupted due to the weather, transportation challenges, or economic constraints. By relying on local resources, communities can ensure a steady food supply even in the face of external uncertainties. The third, nutritional value. Wild-caught fish, game meat, and gathered plants often provide high-quality nutrition. Subsistence foods are often fresher and less processed than store-bought alternatives, contributing to better overall health outcomes for the communities of rural Alaska. Subsistence, as long as the communities do not hunt, catch, or gather beyond their needs, are sustainable since it's deeply rooted in the values of rural communities to not waste and to use wild resources in their entirety. So the cultural traditions is a key point of subsistence activities. As mentioned earlier in the semester by Jim McDaniels, in his presentation, subsistence is about sharing and cooperation. Subsistence provides essential food resources for community members, contributing to food security and nutritional well-being. By relying on locally available resources, communities can reduce dependence on external food sources and mitigate the risks associated with disruptions in food supply chains, such as high prices, limited availability, or like what we just went through, a worldwide pandemic. Sharing of subsistence activities within or harvests within the community fosters solidarity, reciprocity, and mutual support, strengthening social bonds and resilience. Subsistence activities are deeply rooted in traditional practices and are integral to the cultural identity and heritage of rural Alaskan communities. Hunting, fishing, and gathering are not only fun activities, but have a huge cultural significance. Subsistence resources are used for traditional purposes such as clothing, construction, arts, and crafts. Subsistence activities preserve traditional knowledge and practices passed down through generations. Subsistence activities establish values such as respect for nature, interdependence within communities, and these values emphasize sustainable harvesting techniques, conservation of resources, and a responsible management of the environment. Through participation in these activities, community members develop a deep connection to the land and wildlife. This practice is vital to the survival of Alaska Native cultures, since these activities provide opportunities for cultural values, beliefs, and skills to be passed down onto the younger generations. There's also a large economic importance to subsistence activities. Subsistence activities create employment opportunities within rural communities. Jobs related to equipment sales, processing facilities, and transportation may arise from these activities. Additionally, subsistence-related employment can extend beyond harvesting activities to include other sectors such as tourism, hospitality, retail, and supporting local livelihoods. These activities offer savings for individuals and families by reducing the reliance on store-bought foods and minimizing transportation and distribution costs associated with importing foods from larger cities. So, there are many consequences of hazardous waste spills on subsistence activities. The first being environmental damage. Second being health risks, cultural impact, and economic loss. So between 2010 and 2022, there have been 16 major oil spills, and on average, 2,000 oil spills and hazardous substance spills are reported to the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation each year. Disasters like this directly impact subsistence activity and the economy of the communities in which they occur. Oil spills and other hazardous substance spills have consequences on the environment, health of the community, culture, and local economy. So, hazardous waste spills can lead to contamination of soil, waterways, and ecosystems, posing a serious threat to wildlife and aquatic species. These spills can disrupt delicate ecological balances and have a long-lasting impact on the environment, including reduced biodiversity and the ecosystem health. Exposure to these hazardous materials from spills can also pose health risks to humans, including long-term health issues such as cancer and neurological disorders. This is particularly important since many of these rural communities rely on subsistence activities for food, as contaminated resources can lead to ingestion of toxic materials. The cleanup and efforts can also be very costly. placing a huge financial burden on government agencies, businesses, and local people. Loss of access to wild resources have lasting impact on the cultural identity and well-being as well. So there are many issues that surround the hazardous waste spills. So hazardous spills come from a variety of sources, such as fishing boats, freighters, leaky storage tanks, abandoned drums, and discarded waste. Discarding hazardous waste can be complicated, and there is no safe way to dispose of hazardous waste in the rural Alaskan setting, and backhauling is expensive and logistically difficult for many rural communities. A well-coordinated, however, a well-coordinated statewide backhaul program will reduce risks to health and the environment, stretch rural Alaska's budget, and protect subsistence resources. There are a few nonprofit organizations that have actually taken on the task to help manage hazardous waste, which will help mitigate buildup and potential hazardous spills. Modernization and regular inspection of oil containment will also decrease the amount of spills. A majority of smaller oil spills occur due to old and unmaintained equipment. Having state programs that assist in modernization of equipment will drastically reduce the occurrence of oil spills. With the combined efforts of modernization, nonprofit organizations, and state agencies, the amount of spills will decrease while the environment, wildlife, and rural Alaskans are protected. So, subsistence in rural Alaska is crucial for the cultural preservation, food security, economic stability, and community cohesion. It is vital to the subsistence economies of rural communities to protect the environment and wildlife. Through the action of nonprofit organizations and state agencies, the amount of spills will decrease while the environment, wildlife, and rural Alaskans are protected.